Hello, this is Pete, or Kenshin1913, and this is another Cooking with Kenshin1913. I'm flying solo today, but I'm actually going to be making something that I've been wanting to make for a long time, and it is beef jerky. Alright, so the things that we're going to need for beef jerky is obviously beef. I have, these are called minute steaks. They're decent. I mean, they're pretty thin. You want kind of thin. And I got 3 pounds of beef. Next, we're going to be needing black pepper. We're going to need paprika. We're going to use soy sauce because I'm making a citrus jerky. It's an orange jerky. You can use soy sauce or you could use teriyaki sauce for this. If you use teriyaki, it's basically going to be an orange teriyaki. I'm basically showing you the base here. This is the base right here. These ingredients. The oranges, they're actually going to be the extra thing that you can add. So we got black pepper, we got paprika, we got soy sauce or teriyaki, we have honey, we have Worcestershire, red pepper flake, cayenne, garlic powder, and onion powder. I'm going to have the ingredients in the description, the exact amount. The other couple of things we're going to be needing, because this is a 2-part recipe, we're going to be needing one of these pans. Well, you don't really need this pan, but you need a bowl or something that you can store all the marinated meat, because you're pretty much going to take the meat, cut it up, marinate it, and then we're going to store it overnight. Now, some recipes call for not having to store it. You could like literally season it and throw it in, but this one gives it more flavor, lets it marinate, and it's going to be terrific. So let's get moving. Alright, so the first thing we're going to need to do is add 3/4 of a cup of Worcestershire, because we're going to make our marinade first. I hope you can see this. Let me turn it this way. But yeah, this recipe is great because I've made it tons and tons of times before, and pretty much the inspiration that I got for starting to make beef jerky was actually this Let's Player. His name was the Game Hoarder, and he basically made jerky, which made me like, oh man, jerky's great. Because it was during this point when I was trying to do this this diet where you need a lot of protein, or protein helps out with diets. So I was like, let me make this. And so yeah, the inspiration to even start making jerky was from the Game Hoarder. And then one of my friends, he made jerky, and I'm like, man, this is so good, I gotta try it. Now this recipe, this is 3/4 of a cup of Worcestershire. Now we need 3/4 of a cup of soy sauce. But yeah, this recipe can be used as the base. The soy you can replace with teriyaki if you're planning on making a teriyaki sauce. One other thing that I want to mention while I'm pouring out the sauce here is this works great with chicken, with pork, with turkey if you want to make it. I'm going to explain how you would do the turkey one later, and then there's also other methods that you can do in order to cook it or dehydrate it, because that's what we're going to need to do. We're going to basically put this in the fridge overnight and then dehydrate the next morning or the next day. The whole process takes a few hours, but so we got our soy sauce. Next, we're going to throw in 2 teaspoons of black pepper. Next, we're going to throw in 1 teaspoon or a heaping teaspoon of smoked paprika. I like to add just a little more. I like the smokiness. You could add liquid smoke too if you want. If you have it around, use it. If not, that's okay too. Like I mentioned, this is a base recipe, and from here you can practically go anywhere with it. You can take out some heat if you want. You can do less heat. Speaking of heat, we're going to be adding some cayenne now. Just 1/4 teaspoon. And we're going to be mixing this all up later. Now we're going to add 1 teaspoon of crushed red pepper. Again, if you don't want all this heat, that's okay. The red pepper flakes do add a little extra oomph. Now we're going to add 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. And lastly, 1 teaspoon of onion powder. Alright, and finally, actually this is the finally out of everything for the base recipe. You're gonna add 1 tablespoon of honey, because honey is gonna help preserve it, along with all the salt, or the salt from the soy sauce and the Worcestershire. Now you could definitely use, like I've used, low sodium soy sauce, which is totally fine. You want to use that. Now this is pretty much it for the base. So now I'm going to show you what we're going to add to make it a little fancier. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add some orange zest into it. Basically, none of the rind, or none of, yeah, you don't want any of the rind. But yeah, the nice thing about this jerky is once you learn how to do it, this is more about technique than anything. And I'm going to use the zest of 2 oranges, or most of it. You know, mostly 2. And I'm going to use the juice of maybe 2, because I want to get that nice citrus. And you see how you're getting all that zest in here? But yeah, I've made tons of jerkies in the past. Ever since I started doing my own jerkying, I guess is what you call it. I became like a beef jerk. I made a drunken jerk. I've used my buddy's ketchup, or my buddy's barbecue sauce as a recipe. Pretty much what you would do for the drunken jerky, if you're interested, is you would use the same flavors. Like I made it with a Guinness. I made it with a what was the other one I made it with? I made it with it's called a Mississippi Mud beer. And basically, you would substitute the Worcestershire and the soy sauce for just beer, and you put the beer in, and you'd add the same flavors, and you can change up anything. That's the beauty of doing this. You can pretty much do it once you get the technique down. You can kind of do whatever you want. So yeah, I'm just going to continue to put the rest of the zest in here, and we'll be back. Okay, now we're going to get the juice out of these guys. And they're pretty big, so you're going to get a lot of juice. Now it depends on how zesty you want it, or on how much orange flavor you want. I want a lot of orange flavor because I think it goes good with the I was going to say, did I cut it the wrong way? I think it goes good with helping to balance out the heat. And yeah, this is not. There we go. I gotta turn it like that. But yeah, there's all different ways to do jerky. And again, this well, I should have probably rolled it. Yeah, that's alright. Alright, so if you don't even have oranges, or you could always use orange juice. I think I added enough juice. I'm not gonna add the other orange. So the juice of 1 orange. Okay, now it's time for everybody's favorite part, the mixing. Getting the marinade all incorporated so that everything is with everything, rather than it being globulars. And you just want to mix it up and get everything ready. Now, like I mentioned, you can do beef, you can do pork, you can do turkey, you can do chicken. You can do whatever you want. The only thing is, if you're going to use poultry, there's going to be something you're going to want to do at the very end of dehydrating. You're basically going to want to put it in the oven at like 200 degrees for like, I think it's like 15 minutes until it gets to an internal temperature of 165, which shouldn't take too long. And then because it's called I forget what that technique is called. It's called basically you're finishing cooking it to make sure there's no diseases, because how this is going to work is it's going to sort of cook from all the preserves that you got in there with the salt and the honey and everything. Alright, so we got our marinade ready. Now it's time to cut our meat. Now it's time to get our hands dirty. What we're going to do is take this beef. As you can see, if I can take it out, see how thin it is? It's less than I don't know, it's like a 1/4 inch thick. Now, you can decide to make your jerky whichever way you want. You can make it long ways, or you can make them thick chunks like this. Personally, I like to make them like thick or I like to make them strips because it's just easier to put in the container that I use. And usually I get about 3, but this one's 2, whatever. Anyways, they're gonna shrink while you're cooking them. So now we're just gonna throw them in the marinade as we're doing it. And I'll show you if you want to cut them this way, that's fine too. Sometimes you want to make multiple ones, and that's fine. Now one thing you can do after you marinate this jerky, because we're going to marinate it overnight, at least 8 hours until overnight if you want. Pretty much you can reuse the marinade, but it's not going to be as strong. That's the only thing. You're gonna lose some of the potency of it. You can add extra spices in at that point, but you know, if you don't want it, that's fine too. You just have like less hardcore jerky. So I think that's pretty much it for now. I'm just gonna cut this up and then I'll show you what we're gonna do with the marinade. You want to get all the beef flavored. We are back here with our beef, and now we're just gonna mix it all together, and yeah, just make sure everything's getting flavored and everything's touching that beautiful sauce. Now the nice thing about making your own jerky is it might be a little tricky to do, but not only is it an excellent source of protein that you get, but also, you know, you get to make it your own. You know what's going in it. Sometimes they put extra preservatives in it and that you might not, you'd be like, what is this ingredient that's in here? And it's just something fun to do, and you can pack it up. Makes good gifts if you're making jerky for people, if people really like jerky. Like I mentioned, I got into making jerky a couple of years ago, like longer than that, like 4 or 5 years ago. And it's just been really fun to experiment and make my own. One time I did just to get back to that, I made like a Sprite jerky, which was like lemon lime, but with this type of base. And then I just added a ton of lemon, ton of lime, because I like doing like the citrusy ones, because it helps like you know, kick the heat a little bit. But so what we got here is pretty much everything here is ready to roll. And now what you're gonna want to do is get some saran wrap and just place it on it, and then just let this marinate overnight, or at least 8 hours, because this is like a wet rub. Obviously if you're doing a dry rub, you just throw the red on there and boom bang boom. But yeah, lemon pepper jerky's another good one. There's all different flavors. I mean, just go to your local store, check out the spot where they have all the jerky, and be like, oh look, I like that, maybe I can make it myself. So yeah, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna throw it in the, and we're gonna wrap it up and put it in the fridge, and then pretty much I'll come back and we'll show you how to dehydrate it and get it ready for that. We are back. The meat has been in the refrigerator overnight. We're gonna take it off. I'll show you what it looks like here. Now we're going into the second phase of the jerky making process. Oh, I just made a mess. Now well, I'll clean it up. It smells great. A lot of citrus orangey flavor. So you can see the jerky has been well marinated. So what we're gonna need to do now is we're gonna put it on a plate with paper towel and pat off any excess moisture, because that will make the dehydrating process much faster. So now we're going to be working with our dehydrator sheets, right? I have a fancy schmancy dehydrator because I love dehydrating jerky. That's one of the big things that I do with it. So I got a fancy schmancy one. If you have a regular one, obviously you're going to use the regular sheets, and and then I'll explain more later. But if you're not using a dehydrator sheet, you can always use a pan. If you're going to do this in the oven, you can always use a cookie sheet with a rack, because you need to have a rack so that the air can flow throughout the entire jerky to dehydrate it. So let's get started with this. I'll show you sort of what we do. So we take some paper towel, and I'm going to be using this same 2 sheets the whole way through for this one, but changing up the ones when I'm matting them down. So we're going to turn it, we're going to place it in here, and we're going to take our tongs and we're going to put the jerky on the paper towel. Don't put all of it, just do a little bit at a time. You're gonna have to do this in layers. And try not to get them like laying on top of each other, just because it might be harder for it to dehydrate later. I mean, you don't have to be perfect with this, but the more moisture you get off the jerky now, or the meat now, will save you time in the dehydrating process later. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep putting down. And the term that I was looking for, I believe, is called tempering. When you temper the so like let's say you're making a poultry jerky, chicken or turkey, you're gonna want to temper it after you're done dehydrating it to make sure that it gets to the correct temperature of, I believe, 165. But yeah, there's a lot of terrific ways to do jerky, and it is really a great source of protein. All right, so I got a bunch here. I could put more, but this is just to show you. And we're gonna take our paper towel here. We're gonna fold it a little bit and just gently pat. We're just gonna gently pat the jerky down. You're gonna try not to get rid of the, as you can see inside here, some of the red pepper flakes that you got going on here. You're gonna wanna try and keep some of that on, because that'll dehydrate on there, will be great. So now what we're gonna do, I'm gonna show you, we're gonna put them on here, and you're gonna wanna lay them as flat as you can while not touching anyone. And the flatter you get them, the better it will take, or the easier it'll be to dehydrate. If you kind of put them on here and they're all twirly, it's tough. So you just want to leave a little bit of space in between obviously the little air folds here. And yeah, just gonna throw them on here. So I'm gonna continue to do that, and then I'll come back and before we throw them all in the dehydrator, and I'll show you what we gotta do. All right, so we have our final tray of jerky. I made about 5 trays, and so we're gonna start dehydrating, but I want to just explain what we're gonna do if you're putting them on your cookie tray and then throwing them in the oven. Pretty much you want to set your oven to its lowest setting, which might be 200, and if it is 200, you might want to open the oven just a crack here, just to let out a little heat, because you want the temperature of the oven to be around like a little under 200, around 160 or something, and you're gonna keep it in there for a few hours. You're gonna check and see how it is. Pretty much, usually jerky making takes about 6 to 8 hours in the oven. I've never actually done it in the oven because I've always had a dehydrator, whether it be a dehydrator that just dehydrates, like one of those old school Ronco ones that we used to have, or this one which actually has its own jerky unit on there. So if you wanted to actually reuse the juice here, I would honestly, you can, but I would honestly just take half of all the stuff that you used and put it back in, and then just mix it around, because you probably have you obviously have less juice, and it's going to be less potent if you try to reuse it again. Let's say you want to make another big old batch. So let's put these in the dehydrator. Okay, so here's our dehydrator here. I like to call it Darth Vader because it's a big black Excalibur. Not that we're sponsored by it, but if I wish I was, because it's awesome. Also known as the Parallax dehydrator. All right, now as I mentioned, there are different settings for different dehydrators. As you can see on this one, you actually have, herbs, living foods, bread dough, making yogurt, vegetables, this, that, and the other. Then it has these 2 knobs here. So it's very easy and convenient to use for this, but there should be different settings on your dehydrator. Usually, if you're using one, the newer ones definitely have them. So we're gonna set this in the oven, or in the dehydrator, for about 6 hours at, I believe it's at 165, which is the jerky setting. So yeah, we're gonna be setting the jerky at 145 or 165, and we're pretty much gonna cook it for about 6 to 8 hours, and then we'll come back when it's all set, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, it's been about 6 hours. Let's check it out. I'm pretty sure that it is done. Anyways, look at the jerky. It's fairly dry. As you can tell, they've also shrunken quite a bit. I'll show you another tray. Now, if you were doing a poultry jerky, you have to actually take these and put them in an oven and let them cook for about 15 minutes on, I believe 15 minutes for like 200 or so, or 220 or 250 for like 15 minutes, just to get the internal temperature up to where you want it. So at this point, I'm gonna let these sit in here for probably, I don't know, maybe about 20 minutes. You could literally eat them right now, but I'm gonna let them cool down for about 20 minutes while they get to room temp, and then I'm gonna show you a nice thing that you can store them in. But they're practically done right now. All right, it's been about 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes, and I'm using this nice airtight container. It's got a nice lid to it that you can just go in there and snack on the jerky if you want. It's really nice. It keeps it airtight. Now, I usually don't refrigerate my jerky. I mean, it really doesn't last that long anyways. But yeah, I like to just throw it on in. And one thing that I want to mention is this jerky is a little more, I wouldn't call it rawhidey, but it's a little more tough than other jerkies. And pretty much, if you want yours a little more loose, like I don't know what this. Basically, if you want the consistency of like how you would get it if you bought a jerky from the store or from a bag of jerky, you probably would want to cook that on a higher temperature for like less time, and I think you would be able to get it. But yeah, look at the jerky here. Nice consistency. It's not super tough. You still get like a juicy flavor in the middle, and I'll show you it when we're done. But yeah, I'm just gonna make sure to store them in an airtight container, and yeah, we're gonna eat some. All right, so here's our jerky. As you can see, this is just a smattering of it, and I'm actually gonna eat a thicker piece here, so that I can tell you how it is. As you can tell, it's got some bite to it. Still, it's thicker, so it's still a little juicy. You definitely get that orange at the end, the nice citrus, and it's very spicy, which is good. And like I mentioned, it is a good source of protein. So, one thing I want to mention is how long can you store the jerky? If you leave it out and you keep it in an airtight container, you can honestly keep it a couple of weeks. But usually in my house, it doesn't last more than a week because everybody here loves the jerky. But yeah, it comes out, it's a little, like I said, it's got a little bite to it it's a little more like a bark than it would be like a jerky that you get at the store. So once again, if you like it this way, this is probably the best way to do it. I mean, make your own at home, and it's just as good. And all the ingredients, you know what's going in it. Anyways, that's pretty much it. I've been Pete, or Kenshin1913, and as my mom would say, enjoy and happy eating.